Councillor Chenard.
I move that that the meeting move into closed session to discuss public at large members appointed to library board pursuant to section 17, 19, and 24 of the Freedom of Information Protection Privacy Act.
Thank you, Councillor Chenard. Any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? That motion is carried. That motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. And I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everyone. And now we will begin our second meeting, or you need to re-establish the stream? No. Okay. We will call the meeting of the Town Council meeting to order for October 15th, 2024. In the spirit of truth and reconciliation, we acknowledge the town of Edson is located on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional ancestral lands, the Nikawak, Saulteaux, Siksika, Piikani, Kainai, Dene, Nakota, Sioux, and the Pitimisawak Métis Nations. We honor the knowledge of this land, the elders and youth which gather here, and our ancestors who have gathered here for centuries. And with that, can I get a motion, please, that we adopt the agenda? And I think, Ms. Veerboom, we have some additions tonight. Did we lose her? Oh.
Showing to your screen.
All right, that the agenda for the October 15th, 2024 regular meeting of council be adopted with the addition item G5, disposal of fleet and equipment, and closed session item K1, warming center update pursuant to section 16 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Who would like to make that motion? Councillor Chenard?
I'll make the motion with the two additions.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? That motion is carried unanimously. Can I get a motion, please, to accept the minutes of the October 1st, 2024 regular meeting of council? Go ahead, Councillor Moore.
I so move.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? That motion is carried unanimously. We have no public hearings, no presentations and delegations, no bylaws. But we do have some business items tonight, and we will welcome up Mr. Ryan O'Sullivan, our Transportation and Parks Manager, to present on the Lions Club Campground Delegation Response. Please make sure you turn your mic on too, please.
My apologies. So on September 17th, 2024, Mr. Alan Larner came in with the Edson line pumps and presented to council on the upgrades that they're asking to do by adding 8 full-service campsites, including water, power, sewer hookups, and regrading for those 8 sites because of the angles that they sit on. So here's a picture of where the 8 sites would be, where the grading would need, the sewer would be going down to the south, water to the north for the 8 sites. So in Mr. Lohner's presentation, they didn't really specifically ask for any asks or funds. They just wanted reassurance on the park itself for reimbursement. So if the town ever decided not to renew, they would be reimbursed for their services that they've put out. So administration is recommending that a new service agreement be produced, a land lease be completed, and council may want to consider providing a current grant amount for the Lions Park. And then administration will bring back the agreements for both council for consideration before it's executed. Any questions?
All right, thank you, Mr. O'Sullivan, for your presentation. Council, do you have any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Pisichny.
Yeah, through the mayor to Mr. O'Sullivan. We gave him a grant a while ago. Is there not a grant currently in place for the Lions Club?
Through the mayor to Councillor Pisichny. There is a grant. It hasn't been renewed since 2016, and it's a very small amount considering to the other grant we provide to the other campground we manage.
Okay, and a further question? Another question is, was there consideration given to the fact that there's a sewer line that rolls through the other side of the campground?
That'll be done with the design. So I believe so. The they haven't completed it, so they don't know exactly where the sewer is going to flow, which side is better grade.
Because I just remember that years ago, our director of public works at the time said the easiest place to put services into that campground were on the northeast side, because there's a sewer line that comes out of 41st Street area, so it was be inexpensive. But
Absolutely.
I mean, I would assume
That'll
that
be going through with the design. They'll get all that figured out.
Okay. I thought I had one more question. Oh, may I further? And this one's through the council. I support supporting the Lions Club and running our municipal campground that is within our community. We should remember that when our not-for-profits aren't supported, they can take $1 and make it go a lot further than we can as a municipality. And we don't want to have to get more staff to run a park because we let them fail. So I think we should take consideration in supporting our Lions Club for that park.
Thank you, Councillor Chachka.
Thanks. Through the chair to Mr. O'Sullivan. Yeah, thanks for bringing this forward. And you did mention the current operating grant of $7,500 a year, and the possible maybe to revisit that amount. And I know we do have the operating grant out at Wilmore Park, but I'm not sure if these are comparing apples to apples when we consider the campground operations and what they do and what they receive and how that works. And I'm wondering if administration has a recommendation that is more suitable for the Lions Park.
That's going to have to come back to council. They are very similar. They both run campgrounds. The Wilmore Park campground is considerably larger, but again, they have no site services out there, power only. It's something that council will have to. I guess administration can come back with an amount for you to consider.
Thank you, Mr. Kitlitz.
Yeah, if I could, Mr. Mayor, just to supplement, I think what part of this is again, we have a service provider with an old agreement that we need to really update, and part of that negotiation is talking about what that grant might look like. And I think the Lions Club might have some input in terms of how their operations are, so we'll consider that. We'll do a bit more analysis and come back maybe with some options for council when we bring the agreement back. But it's also important to note that we don't have a lease right now that we can find for this site, and it's pretty important that we get a lease in place. So, and then in terms of the capital improvements that they're asking for, these service agreements or this service agreement doesn't address that at all. So we're hoping to bring some options back for how we deal with future capital investment into the park. So I think when we looked at it, it was just a matter of let's clean up this paperwork side of it first, and then it'll be much easier to stick handle future asks when they come forward. So don't have a recommendation right now, but we kind of wanted to get a feel for whether council was supportive of us looking into that and whether they'd be. But we'll come back with some options for sure.
Go ahead with your follow-up.
Okay, thank you. I just wasn't sure if we were looking for a number tonight or not, so I appreciate that you'll have an opportunity to look into the agreement and then follow up with that. Thank you.
Councillor Pisichny.
Yeah, through the mayor to administration, I do know the Lions Club is looking for an agreement because there's a lot of money they're looking at fundraising, and they want to ensure that they don't fundraise a bunch of money and then the town take it away. So I definitely support an up-to-date lease and agreement with them.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. O'Sullivan, for your presentation. Council, I'll take a motion. Go ahead, Councillor Chenard.
Council direct administration to enter into negotiations with the Lions Club for an updated service agreement.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? That motion is carried unanimously. And can I get a second motion, please? Go ahead, Councillor Chachka.
I move that council direct administration to negotiate a land lease with the Lions Club for the continued operations of a campground on Lot 1, Block 8, Plan 4200 MC.
All right, thank you. Council, any further questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? That motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Next up, we have our capital projects update, and we will welcome up our infrastructure manager, Mr. Armia McHale.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight to provide an update on the capital projects and items were approved for 2024, and thank goodness, first time I'm here not to ask for money, so that's a good news. I'll start with few items that were reported in the second quarter. I believe the report was on May 2024. A new asphalt repair trailer has been delivered. MT Trackless 7 articulating all-season tractor. That's for parks. That also has been delivered. A new plow blade for the airport has been delivered. I divided the presentation based on the division so I can give the opportunity to each manager to answer question at the end of the division report. I'll start with the Community Services and Protective Services division. I'll start with the Protective Services. The first capital item is the sprinkler trailer. The approved budget for this item is $250,000. The actual cost is $225,750. This was awarded to CNB Trailer for St. John, BC, and the trailer has been in service since second quarter. Next item is emergency backup generator. The approved budget for this item is $75,000. The actual cost is $74,989. This was awarded to Current Electrical Solutions, Edson, Alberta, and it has been in service since third quarter. Third item is the replacement for Unit 601. The approved budget for this item is $120,000. Actual cost is $90,407.73. This was awarded to McLean Ford in Calgary, Alberta, and the unit has joined service in the third quarter of 2024. Next item under Protective Services is new bunker gear washing machine with extractor. The approved budget for this item is $13,000. The actual cost is $10,177.27. This was awarded to Brogan Fire and Safety, and this has been in service since the first quarter of 2024. Next project for Protective Services is new flooring for fire hall, training room, and kitchen. The approved budget for this project is $10,000. The actual cost is $10,057.67. The contractor carried out this project is Elite Floor Coatings based on Edmonton, Alberta, and this project was completed on the first quarter of 2024. Now I'm still under Community and Protective Services, but I move to Recreation. First project under Recreation is Edson and District Leisure Center Fire Alarm Upgrade. The approved budget for this project is $180,000, while the actual cost is $105,459. The contractor carried out this work is Complete Power Solutions based on Edmonton, Alberta, and this project was completed on May 3rd, 2024. Next item is the replacement of Unit E114. It's the ice resurfacer. The approved budget for this item is $180,000. The actual cost is $150,536. This was awarded to Big Hill Services and Arena Supplies, and the expected delivery is November 2024. Last project under Recreation is the YCE multi-use facility. It started in 2024. The approved budget for this project is $80,240,000. The year-to-date cost is $2,562,303. The project management consultant is Tango Management Group Ltd. The contractor is Clark Builders, and the architect is GEC Architecture. The expected completion date for this project is fall 2027. Any questions?
All right, so thank you very much for that presentation, and we'll open the floor to any questions for Community and Protective Services to Mr. Doug Wagstaff. Go ahead, Councillor Bevan.
On your upgrades to your fire system in there,
Please address your question through the chair.
through the chair. Through the chair, on your upgrades to your fire system and at the leisure center, is there gonna be any more upgrades when we build a multiplex, or was that all been configured into there?
Go ahead, Mr. Wagstaff.
Yeah, thank you.
Through the mayor to Councilor Bevan and all council, yes, there are other upgrades that are going to occur that will bring it up to code. As we will all recall, that was an emergent, quite urgent need in the leisure center. And I'll just speak to the fact that it came in under budget because we were based off of if it took longer, there was associated costs with the length of time. The contractor we had in came in, did it quickly. They knew time was of the essence, and that was where the savings came from.
Thank you, Mr. Wagstaff. Any further questions? Any follow-ups, Councillor Bevan? No. Okay, thank you. All right, we will move on. Oh, please turn your mic on.
Sorry. First capital project under facilities is food bank roof replacement. The approved budget for this project is $250,000. The year-to-date cost is $180,520.20. The consultant for this project is Delwing Roof Consulting Ltd. And the contractor is Christensen McLean Roofing Co. and roof completed in the third quarter of 2024. However, water damage has been found in the interior of the building, and we're currently working on estimates to fully complete this project, including drywall, electrical, and finishings. Second project under facilities is the library renovation. The approved budget for this project is $3,700,000. The year-to-date cost is $3,596,719.23. The consultant for this project is WSP Inc. and the contractor is Bird Construction. The library was open to the public on August 16, 2024. Any questions?
All right, we will open the floor to questions. And these will go to Mr. Shapates. Go ahead, Councillor Chouinard.
Through the chair to Mr. Shapates. Where you have year-to-date, you spent this much money, like where you had the figures up there, they're not complete. We're not anticipating a high number, because I think the library, going by what the screen said, 3.7 is budget, we're at 3.5, but the building should be complete. There's enough funding, is what my question is.
Go ahead, Mr. Kitlitz.
Mr. Mayor, through you, I can answer that one. So the project is pretty much complete. We have one final progress payment to Bird that should come in less. We're expecting to be right on or just slightly under budget. I think the last spreadsheet I saw from WSP was about $29,000 under. So pretty close. There's a list of deficiencies they'll still be working over the next year, but we'll have a holdback for that. But it'll be pretty tight.
Thank you. Councillor Bevan.
Through the chair. To represent it. On the food bank building, you came in under 180,000. Would the rest of that be going to repairing the water damage that's been in the building, or is that a separate item?
Through the chair to Councillor Bevan. Yes, we've currently had the drywall in that building was older. There's going to have to be some asbestos abatement. So we're currently working through the process of getting estimates to get that cleaned up and replaced.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Just further on the food bank, was that water damage prior to the roof replacement, or was that found after the roof replacement?
Mr. Mayor, I believe there's a little bit of both. I think as they were doing the roof replacement, it rained and it leaked a bit, but it was also leaking before.
Okay. Yeah, because I thought my understanding was they haven't had any leaks since the roof has been replaced. So,
No, it's all from
okay.
before.
Okay, awesome. Any other questions for facilities? Seeing none, you can move on. Turn your mic back on, please.
I'll move to the Operation and Infrastructure Division. I will start with the Transportation and Parks Department. First capital project under this department is Wilmore Park directional signage. The approved budget for this project is $7,000. Expected completion is fourth quarter of 2024, and we're currently working with Edson Cycling Association. Next project is the 2023 flood repairs. Approved budget for this project is $241,000. This is ongoing using internal forces. Next project is the library parking lot and storm water improvement. That's for design. The budget for this project is $25,000. The year-to-date cost is $16,626.21. We completed the lane design and ready to be regraded in 2025. What's currently in progress, we are disconnecting the sanitary manhole in the grass area west of the library from the main, and this will function as a dry well. Future steps, the storm infrastructure will be installed when parking lot project is prioritized in the capital plan. Any questions for transportation and parks?
Thank you. Councillor Chachka.
Through the chair to administration, my question is regarding Wilmore Park and the directional signage. And the question is regarding signage throughout the entire Wilmore Park trails, or is it just to the newer parts that have been added? I know in the older parts of the trails there have been some very old signage, but I've noticed new signs in the new parts of the trail. So,
Mr. Kitlitz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know what? I don't actually know the answer to that. Ryan might have better details than I do on that one. Thank you.
Welcome, Mr. O'Sullivan.
Through the mayor to Councilor Chacha. So it's just in the new part of the trails. Yeah, we had a small budget. They wanted to do the whole thing, but we kind of had to scale it back a bit. So yeah, they're working on the signage right now. As soon as it's complete, it'll be installed.
Thank you. All right. Any further questions or comments on that? Just a question on the library and the stormwater and parking. You say their lane design is complete and will be ready to be regraded. Are we planning on just leaving that gravel, or are we looking at paving it? Because we do have a paved portion, a new paved portion on the back of that building, and it kind of seems odd not to pave that alley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So no plans to pave it. The asphalt paving is actually on the library property. It's not within the lane. So right now we haven't had any plans to repave it. It'll be regraded, and then as mentioned, we'll get rid of that inflow problem from the storm. And then at some point when the parking lot's done, we'll patch up the rest of the storm. So we probably won't want to pave it till after this, we do any ultimate storm work there anyway, because we may have to go down that lane with the storm. So potentially in the future if that's a will of council, but no plans right now.
All right, thank you for that clarification, Mr. Kitlitz. No other questions? Seeing none, please continue.
Next, I'll move to the Utilities and Fleet Department. I'll start with the fleet. The first item under fleet is replacement for 2013 Ford F-250 crew cab 3/4 ton 4x4 service truck. It's unit V141. The approved budget for this item is $90,000, while the actual cost is $71,261. This was awarded to Metro Ford, Tsuut'ina Nation, Alberta, and delivered in September 2024. Next item is the replacement for 2011 Dodge 1500 half-ton 4x4. It's unit number V134. The approved budget for this item is $75,000. The actual cost is $65,369. It's also awarded to Metro Ford, Tsuut'ina Nation, Alberta, and delivered on October 2024. I'll move to the utilities. First project under utilities is connecting water well number 30 to the town's distribution network. The approved budget for this project is $300,000. The year-to-date cost is $1,415.70. We completed the preliminary chemical and flow testing while calculating long-term pumping rates, and further chemical testing prior to connection is in progress. Next project is the fluoride plant. That's a regulatory. Approved budget for this project is $100,000. The year-to-date cost is $12,020. It's in progress, expected to be completed before the end of October. Any questions for utilities and fleet?
Council, we'll open the floor to any questions on this section. Seeing none, you can move on.
Thank you. I'll move to the infrastructure capital projects. The map here is showing the locations of the 4 projects were carried out this year. We have 46th Street power line burial on the east side of 46 between 6th Ave and back lane north of 8th Ave. We have 18th Ave full rehabilitation between 48th Street and to the cul-de-sac west of 49th Street. We have 10th Ave and 54th Street sanitary upgrade. They both are under one contract with one contractor. And I'm sorry, there should be one more, which is Township 532. That's part of the 2024 approved capital projects. It doesn't show the map. So I'll start with the construction of Township Road 532 between 54th Street and Wilmore Park Road, or 63rd. Approved budget for this project is $500,000. The RFP is sent out. We sent out the RFP to our pre-qualified consultants for design, and it's anticipated to close end of October 31st. And the construction tender should be completed in December 2024, and construction is expected to be in winter 2025 based on base preparation, building design, and public engagement or open house. Next project is Wass Creek construction or upgrade. Approved budget for this project is $1,800,000, both design and construction pending on land acquisition. Next project is 18th Ave full rehabilitation. This project included replacement of underground infrastructure, water, wastewater, storm, curb and gutter, sidewalk, new asphalt, new base, new sub-base, and also replaced the old wooden street lights with the new galvanized steel ones. The approved budget for this project is $3,350,000. The year-to-date cost is $2,664,162.76. And just to clarify, this amount saying year-to-date includes the last invoice from Parkway, from the contractor. So we are not expecting any more invoices from the contractor. However, there is one outstanding invoice. It should be from TELUS. Once they complete the cable burial, I just reached out to them today, and hopefully by end of October, we receive this invoice, which is $50,000. This will make this project complete for roughly $630,000 below budget. The consultant for this project is WSP Canada. Contractor is Parkway Enterprises Ltd. They have done a great job, and the road was opened on August 28, 2024. I'll move next to the power line burial on 46th Street on the east side between 6th and 9th, or north of 8th, the back lane. The budget for this project is $300,000. The year-to-date cost is $268,849.33. This was completed on August 31st, 2024, barely before the school season. So luckily it was completed before the school. Next project is 10th Ave sanitary sewer upgrade. This is part of one contract, as I mentioned earlier. There were two locations, 10th Ave and 54th Street. We had two budgets, two approved budgets, one for each. However, at the end, it's one contract. So for this one, the approved budget is $1,650,000. Year-to-date cost is $973,825.12. This is not the final invoice. We are expecting still one or two more payment certificate to include asphalt and landscaping. The consultant is McLeany and the contractor is GS Construction. To be on the safe side, I would say this is anticipated to complete by end of October. The landscape contractor is already in town, so hopefully he will finish by the end of the week, but just to be on the safe side, I'm saying end of October. And just to remind council, if you recall, we had to, based on council directions, we had to cut the scope, reduce the scope for this project due to unforeseen challenges on 10th Ave. I'm displaying a few pictures, and this is just some of what we have encountered. The first picture here on the left, it shows water main, and this is a cab of water main, and where I'm pointing here is an I-beam. Apparently back then, there was a conflict between the water main and the sanitary sewer, so they decided to cut the water main, cab it from both sides, and have an I-beam to act as a thrust block to give room for the sanitary sewer. This is not the best solution because it makes the water stagnant at a dead end. We don't prefer dead ends for potable water. We prefer to loop it so there is circulation. So if you look here at the right picture, we connected both sides of the water main using bends and pouring concrete to make sure it's a loop. This will make it easier for operations during cleaning or maintenance. Also, if you recall this, I'm sure you remember this middle picture where it shows conflict between the sanitary service in more than one location and the storm line. That's why we cut the scope for this small portion, and it's added to the scope of work of the project B1 and A6 planned for 2025 pending council approval. Next project is 54th Street sanitary sewer upgrade. Again, the budget for this project separately is $2,400,000. Year-to-date cost is $1,639,467.86. Still, the consultant is McLeany and the contractor also is GS Construction, same as 10th Ave, set to complete on October 2024. And again, currently they are working on the landscape and sod. Before I finish the infrastructure, I know there was some inquiry from council members regarding project update on project B1 and A6. This project, we came a month or 2 months ago asking for money to allocate it for design, and council approved the amount for design. The reason I did not include it in this presentation, this is anticipated to be a 2025 project. That's why I didn't include in 2024. However, we issued an RFP to our pre-qualified consultants. We did award this to McLeany, who scored the highest score based on the selection criteria. Currently, I'm in the process of developing agreement to be signed with McLeany. However, we had the kick-off meeting last week. We provided them with the base drawing, and they are starting the design process. It's anticipated to complete the design by end of January, and we are hoping to tender it out and get bids by mid-February, subject to council approval for this project. One last thing, I did prepare and submit a proposal to Alberta Environment and Protected Areas based on a letter was sent to the mayor last year regarding a grant for $947,000 and $947,730 based on the certificate of variance. I believe you received it from Minister Schultz, yes. So I did prepare the proposal. I tried to emphasize that this project is serving the community and the environment. I submitted to them, and hopefully it fits the criteria and we can secure the money.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. McHale. Council, any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Pasichny.
Yeah, through the mayor to administration. Mine's on 46th Street, where the power line burial. You mentioned in the previous neighborhood, we removed the ugly wooden poles and put in the nice galvanized poles, and I'm curious what the reasoning was we didn't remove the wooden poles and the wires that connect them in a power line burial street.
Through the mayor to council position, I believe during the transfer of information from council to myself, there was some gap in the scope of work. So what I understood and received is the cable burial just on the east side of 46th Street. That's why we did not even, and to be honest with you, even when I joined the town, this code was already submitted to Fortis, and I just followed up on the code that was submitted. I'm not sure if my predecessor, I have no idea what was happening before me joining, so I just followed up on the scope of work that was already submitted to Fortis. However, we can get a code for the rest of the area or for replacing the power street lines.
Go ahead, Mr. Kitlitz.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I could, so I think that was pretty much my fault. So when I was the one here, that we didn't have a project coordinator at that time. So when I first engaged Fortis, I didn't realize they had a small regular and a supersized deal when you mentioned burying power lines or burying that stuff. So when I asked for that quote, I assumed it was for everything, and I didn't realize that they were separate things. So we've learned our lesson. I think in the future we'll know to make sure that we're getting all those things in there. So it was just basically my experience with doing something like this that I didn't realize there was more to be communicated. So that was my oversight.
Thank you, Councillor Pasichny.
Yeah, through the mayor, further to that, maybe a good opportunity, because we didn't talk about, but that street, there's a real dark patch in the schools, and when kids go to school in the mornings, it's black from 9th Avenue all the way into the school. So there's an opportunity there to in the future bury those current lights and then extend lights into that street to make it safer for students going to school in the morning. So maybe there's an opportunity there. I was just more curious as I was like, oh, it's done, but it's not done. So it was it's all good. Thank
Through
you.
the mayor to council position, when they do design, when they replace the wooden poles with the steel galvanized one, they do redo calculations to make sure the distance is up to their standards to ensure that the area is well lit. And if we have to extend it, we can ask for this in the code as well.
All right, thank you. Any further questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, I would like to thank you for all your hard work. We completed a lot of projects this summer, and that's because of the team here at the town of Edson, yourself, Mr. McHale. So I want to thank everybody involved in that. We got a lot of projects done. Just a question, though, through to administration, and speaking with some business owners recently, are wondering why they're not getting contracts for town work. I was wondering if, and then I explained the process to them and they weren't aware of that. I was wondering if there's an opportunity maybe to have an open house with local vendors to let them know about the Alberta Purchasing Connection and the process in place in order for them to bid on projects or materials that might be over the thresholds that unfortunately we as council can't control. That's provincial and federal regulations that make us bid out these projects. Something for consideration, because I do know I've spoken to a few and they are completely unaware of where they need to be looking or how they can get on that list to know that that work is being looked at, being done by the town of Edson. I don't know if you have any comments on that or not, but.
Actually, when we issue tender for projects, most probably, since I started here, at least I am contacting local contractors to let them know, give them heads up. And whomever we deal with in the past, I try to send a courtesy email saying, by the way, we have an opportunity coming out. Some of them did apologize, saying, no, this is beyond my capacity, or no, I cannot, or I'm too busy right now. But we definitely will include local contractors for future opportunities to make sure they have fair opportunity.
All right, thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, can I get a motion, please, that council accept the 2024 capital project update as information? Go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
I so move.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you. And I'm just going to call a quick 2-minute recess here, and then we will move on into the reserve policy. All right, thank you everyone for that quick recess. We have Ms. Denise McDonald with us, our acting Chief Financial Officer, presenting on our draft reserve policy. So take it away.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Good evening tonight. Proposed today for the reserve policy is a full rewrite of Reserve Policy FB3. This new policy will better meet the needs of administrative operations and reporting to Council. It better defines the management principles of reserves and establishes the reserves in an appendix, creating clear guidelines for administration to plan, manage multi-year budgets and projects. Its best practices, utilizing consistent language, benchmarking against other municipalities, and ensuring leadership can effectively manage departments based on accurate available reserves. Administration has identified that there was a surplus allocation not completed before the 2023 year end when it was closed, and therefore, because that transaction was not completed, it falls directly to accumulated surplus. So administration is recommending drawing from accumulated surplus to support adjustments to the reserve to meet Council's objective of an optimal reserve balance prior to applying the new reserve policy. So there's a number of things going on in this policy, and I'm going to walk you through it in detail so that you're familiar with what the policy is trying to achieve and the balances, because it's a little bit complicated. There's a number of steps in the process, I should say. So the first item under the policy is that there's a need for fiduciary responsibility of taxpayers' funds. Number 2 is the definitions that I'm sure you're all familiar with. And number 3 is the reserve management principles. The first item is the creation of a new reserve or an amendment to an existing reserve must be authorized by Council. Changes must be authorized by Council. Reserves are outlined in Appendix A, and then existing reserves that have depleted their funds, administration can close those. Into the next page, we cover reserve transactions. All reserve transactions shall be authorized by Council, either through operating and capital budgets, or a separate budget adjustment, or by Council resolution. The CA contingency reserve shall be exempt from Section 3B1 because the intent of this CAO contingency reserve is for imminent transactions that are unable to go through Council to get approval, but then we'll follow up with Council after the fact. Reserves are at the discretion of Council, often as part of an overall strategy for funding programs and projects. Segregated and restricted for specific purposes, but further distinction is made between restricted and unrestricted reserves. So restricted reserves are established by province or municipal legislation and can be only used for those prescribed purposes. Unrestricted reserves are established by Council, and those unrestricted reserves can be further established to assist in funding operational requirements or capital replacement, long-term capital programs, or other special purposes. Section E is reserves are generally used as a funding source to mitigate the impact of fluctuations in operating costs and revenue reductions over municipal budgeting cycles. Eliminating fluctuating tax rates results in a more horizontal tax rate with an incline for inflation, which is more tolerable to our taxpayers. Reserves do not typically earn interest unless there's a legal obligation or legislative requirement to do that. Operational reserves may have a targeted optimal balance based on 10% of the most current operating budget. Then it outlines responsibilities where the CFO, a Chief Financial Officer, is responsible for ensuring compliance, ensuring the reserves are established and maintained, that there's an annual review of the reserves and reported in the audited financial statements. On a required basis, it is recommended that revisions or amendments to this policy due to changes in applicable statutes or accounting standard. The CFO will ensure allocations of reserves are supported in the adopted budget or by council resolution, and will monitor the optimal balance for continued contributions. Monitoring, the next page. Monitoring budgeted transfers to capital reserves corresponds with the future capital expenditures. Will also be the responsibility of the CFO. Presenting the annual year-end surplus will be proposed from the CAO and the senior leadership team, and that will be for approval subsequent to the capital carry-forward allocations being approved by council. In the event that a department is in a deficit position, a draw from reserves may be proposed to address that deficit. Administration may choose to break reserves down for future detailed reserve, I think that should be further detailed reserves for better management, as environment reserves will be broken down into the source funding, so water, sewer, solid waste. The CFO will monitor the total amount of reserves on a quarterly basis to verify the reserves are funded and that cash and investments together will total more than the reserve balances. So we're verifying that it's being funded. Review frequency. This policy will be reviewed every 2 years. But of course, if there's further changes, we can bring it back more frequently if council chooses, or if there's a number of changes required. So in the appendix is listed the reserves. So the first reserves are the restricted reserves. So those ones are legislated by municipal, the MGA, or provincial government, and they have certain requirements that they can only be used for. And then we have the unrestricted reserves. So the first list is the operating reserves. It's established by department, and it is 10% of the budget is the optimal balance. And it's the targeted. So it's not going to be perfect to a certain dollar amount. It will be approximately that area. We'll use it as a target. Then the next page will show the capital. The top one is still under operations, and so that one is designated for helping establish a reserve for the future operations of that YCE multiplex. And then under capital reserves, we've got one for each department. The last section is the unrestricted reserves for other. So these are special types of reserves that require addressing. So resiliency would be for extraordinary or unforeseen expenditures, and it could be up to 15% of the annual municipal tax levy. So if we were to look at 2024, the municipal levy was 13.3 million, and so that target for that reserve would be $2 million. The CAO contingency is established for time-sensitive situations. This reserve will not require council approval for withdrawal, and the reserves will be replenished at the end of each year or as approved by council. So as we're developing our finance team and we're able to report quarterly, that's what we will try to achieve, is on when we come with quarterly financials, we'll bring that information all at the same time. Fleet reserve will be funds designated for the replacement of fleet vehicles and equipment. An energy reserve would be funds designated for underground power line initiatives. Youth is a special reserve because there was donated funds for this youth interagency, and so it's specific funds for that purpose. On the final page is Eddie's Big Run and funds designated for organizing the annual event to fund costs related to the trail enhancements. Major capital, so council can start a major capital reserve fund when we have large projects on the books, and so this one is currently designated for the YCE multiplex project. And then the reserve below is revenue sharing agreement, which has, I haven't changed that one, it had a 3-year rolling average of the revenue sharing agreement. Civic Center, funds designated to fund upgrade or replace the Civic Center. And finally, the Vision Park, were funds designated to fund that vision, specific to Vision Park. So with that, I will take you through the worksheet. I don't know if it's on here though. Oh, here. You can just bear with me as I go through the old policy. Yeah. And I recognize that this one is very hard to see, and so we provided you with hard copies so that it's easy to go through. And this is truly just a worksheet to identify all the steps that we need to do to approve the new reserve policy. So first of all, what I needed to do is establish what reserves do we have and balance it to the 23 audited financial statements. So it will include, because our audited financial statements are consolidated with the WYRWMA, which is
West
our,
Yellowhead Regional Waste Management
there
Authority.
you go. So it indicates that in green there, because those are designated funds that don't necessarily belong to the town. But I needed to include them because it's part of the audited financial statements. So the first item is proposed reserve allocations from the 23 surplus. So the total amount that we are proposing to allocate to reserves is $4,565,453. And this is a conservative approach because the surplus was indicated to be 5.1 million last year. And though that is a number, we know that that's not all cash items. And so I want to stay conservative at this point, and then perhaps at year end, we'll look at it again to see if there's any other allocations that can be made before the end of the year and bring it forward to council. So the green column is proposing those reserves, and what I took into consideration was council's last reserve policy where it had optimal balances, and where I could, I tried to bring it up to those optimal balances to meet the conditions of the current or the current reserve policy. Then I included, because the 2024 budget included contribution to reserves based on the current policy, I had to establish what were the contributions to reserves and the contributions from reserves to have an expected balance before I could apply the new policy. So there's a number of steps we had to go through to get to the new policy. So the yellow column is the expected balance, and maybe I shouldn't have said December 31st, but it would be at this time before we apply the new policy. So then I went through and identified what reserves we need for the new policy, and then I gave information such as the first item, the first page is operating reserves. And what we tried to do was group all the, council will have their own reserve, but all the general government will be grouped together. So HR, IT, finance, those are all general administration, and we can have one reserve for operating, one reserve for capital. So the white area is removing those old reserves and keeping it to the generalized reserve. So the one that indicates the DIP assessment appeal reserve, I've moved it into resiliency because that reserve could have up to $2 million to address those. There's a number of them. There's a disaster recovery, there's taxation stabilization. They all have kind of a similar theme, and so I've grouped them all under resiliency. Protective services would include fire, RCMP, peace officer, public safety, all together. The wildfire reserve was moved to resiliency. The building maintenance reserve was moved to general government. Energy reserve is for the underground power line. Infrastructure and transportation would include roads, air. There's a third one. Stormwater. And then the environmental reserves are the self-supporting reserves. So they include water, wastewater, and waste. So when we present it to council, we're going to group those into environmental, but we'll manage them separately so that the funds that we receive will fall into their own specified reserve. Then there's social services and community development, which is your FCSS, and then and community development, which is your community events and other social programs within the community. Cemetery has its own designated reserve. Medical recruitment and residence, that has to do with doctor recruitment, I believe the clinic, as well as doctor residence for operating. Oh, there's a capital one for the doctor residence. This would be operating for fixing things that are required in there. Planning and economic development fit well together. You'll see there CFWY is the Community Futures loan that was received. That shouldn't be a reserve. It needs to be moved into a receivable, and so it will be taken out of the reserves. Economic development reserve would be moved to planning and economic development. Sale of town land is an operational reserve and to use for future land purchases and or developing those town of Edson land. We have separate reserves for recreation, parks, culture, because we have different departments managing those, so it just seemed easier to keep them separate. Youth interagency was dedicated money donations to the youth interagency, so we kept that separate. The Connected Community Reserve is moved to council. That's part of council's strategic plan. Anything that council wishes to put forward can come under the council general reserve for operating. I don't know, and they, under operating to start new projects. It's just basically seed money to start new projects. And then Eddie's Big Run, the multiplex YCE already spoke to, and then the resiliency reserve is indicated there. And $750K was moved from general government to council general government to fund that reserve. The second page is the capital page. So again, we're starting with general government. That includes finance, IT, HR, anything general government, and then you'll see the CAO contingency reserve. The RSA is the revenue sharing agreement. Civic center would be the replacement of this building. Protective services, equipment fleet. You can see how it starts to make sense now that when you've gone through some of them. Then we get to move to, this one is the Johnson Estate Reserve. Were for infrastructure for the Johnson Estate. There wasn't a large amount sitting there, so I've just moved it to infrastructure reserve. The infrastructure and transportation reserve you'll see is in a negative balance. My recommendation is we either wait until year end, or if council wants to recommend putting that into a positive balance right now, we'd have to take it from another reserve to balance that one out. The next item on there is storm, and then the 3 environmental, water, wastewater, solid waste, and then capital reserve for social services and community development, doctor recruitment and residence, cemetery, planning and economic development, and the future land purchases reserve was a capital reserve, and I've moved it to operating, which it should be an operating reserve. Municipal affairs considers land development as operating, not capital. Public trust reserve, that is actually a restricted reserve, and it should be called money in place of municipal reserves, and it will show up in the pink area below. And then we have capital reserves for recreation, parks, culture, and the YCE multi-use facility. Then we get into, there's a parks equipment reserve is being included under equipment fleet. The fleet reserve for equipment and vehicle purchases. Then the pink ones are the restricted. So Vision Park money was designated for that particular park. Money in place of municipal reserves is legislated, as well as offsites for road, water, wastewater, and we actually do not have offsite levies for storm, and so that money that's there, I've moved to the storm reserve. With that, I'm open to any questions council may have.
Thank you. Councillor Chenard.
Through the chair, I'd like to compliment you because I was on my iPad trying to read this and almost went blind, so thank you for the big paper. So, and other than that, it's a lot to comprehend. No question, just a comment. Thank you for this big paper.
Councillor Moore.
Yes, I just wanted to, through the chair, to our presenter, public trust reserve, I don't see any money in that. I suppose it must be in the chart there somewhere on the second page.
The public trust, thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor Moore. I have a note there saying it was moved to restricted and it's now called money in place of municipal and has a balance of 250,000 in the pink area there.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you. Councillor Pasichny.
Yeah, through the mayor. Why do we have negative balances in our reserves?
Well, thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor Pasichny. There are negative balances because there's projects that took funds out of there that left it in a negative balance. In the policy, we do not want to accept a negative balance and it will have to be rectified before year end. And so we'll either have to draw funds from another council reserve to remedy it, or we'll have to use 24 surplus to address that issue. It cannot stay in a negative. Offsite levies, however, many municipalities are in the negative for offsite levies if they have fronted the development themselves and with the hopes that they would sell the land in the future where the revenue would come in and replenish those funds. So that's why those ones end up in a negative balance.
All right, thank you for that. Councillor Chachka.
Thank you through the chair to our acting CFO. Thank you for the very detailed presentation. I've got a question regarding the Johnson estate and the wildfire estate. So it was my understanding, a few CFOs prior to you mentioned that the Johnson estate had to remain within that kind of little neighborhood. And I'm not sure if that was through council bylaw or how that work was done, because I remember we asked about that money in there. It's like, why do we have to keep that there, right? So I'm just curious if something has changed. And the next one was the wildfire reserve. I thought that one was approved by council that we had to keep that in a special reserve that we couldn't touch, in case the province wanted to, you know, if we had a wildfire, that they could come in and we had, you know, within an agreement that we had with them, I guess, something like that. Because I know council approved that last term. So I don't know if that's something that can go unrestricted going forward.
Go ahead.
Through the mayor to Councillor Chachka. Yes, your first question was on, I'm sorry? Johnson Estates was only $61,000. And so, you know, sidewalk would cover that. And so in discussing it with General Manager Clayton Kitlet, we plan to do some projects that will cover that. So we've put it in the infrastructure reserve, and he will make sure that there is something addressed to accommodate that money, rather than keeping that reserve open. And as for the wildfire reserve, it's not a restricted reserve. I think council put aside money in the event that something happened, that perhaps we had a disaster that we needed money available. And so council, there was kind of a pattern I could see of council having specific reserves for specific purposes. But what happens when you do that is that if you never spend that money, the money sits, and then when you need to do something that requires money, you have to raise it because this reserve is sitting there forever. So by grouping it in this way, that wildfire reserve will end up in resiliency. So if you have an unprecedented event that you need funds for, they'll be up to, well, right now there's 1.2 million and could potentially be up to $2 million of funds in order to address those types of issues. Snowfall, wildfire, floods, any kind of issues like that.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Just further to Councillor Chachka on the wildfire reserve, I think, if I recall correctly, if Alberta Wildfire Actions of Fire, our agreement with them is they could do so without town approval. I think if they action it once, it's about $25,000 a shot. So we had set aside $50,000. So that money would be available without having to impact our operating budget, if I recall correctly. So actually that money probably could even sit in the CEO contingency reserve. Obviously it's an operational thing that would happen if, you know, a fire broke out in our trail system and forestry was the first one to spot it, that they could action it while our fire department was responding. So, my question, I guess, on this is, I noticed that we have medical recruitment and residents, 120,000 in operating, and then a further 96,000 looking at 2025 for capital. Considering this is not an area of municipal responsibility, I am a little concerned that we have that much money sitting there in both of those reserves. Yes, we have the medical clinic we need to look after, as well as our doctors' residents. But when it comes to recruitment, I'm a little concerned that people will see that number there and say, hey, why aren't you spending this money on recruitment? When in actual fact, it's more so for the capital, for the buildings that we own, if we have to do any upgrades, roofs, that sort of thing. So I would suggest that when this comes back to us, maybe we have a little finer look at that, because that's a lot of money sitting there that I don't think would actually get used for any purpose, and have that money reallocated to other areas that are actually municipal responsibility.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could we just amend the operating reserve to just say residents, medical residents, because it's intended to be operational for the building itself, if we need to paint the doctor's house or the medical clinic or that type of thing?
Yeah, something like that. Obviously, the clinic isn't a residence, but maybe, I don't know, medical clinic and residents. I just don't like the impression that we have $120,000 sitting in operating reserve for recruitment, and then people think that's supposed to be for recruitment when that's not actually the case.
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Pizzicini.
Yeah, through to the mayor. Would we not just remove the recruitment part of it? Right, so we should still have money set aside for those buildings?
Yes, but what I'm saying is it's not just for the residents, it's also for the clinic.
Yeah, or
Mostly the clinic,
would we call
actually.
it medical structures?
Sure, something like that. Yeah. Councillor Chachka.
Thanks. Through the chair to CFO McDonald. Another question was in the page 7 of 56. We've got the other reserves, the one called energy. So the description says designated for underground power line initiatives, and I know that's what we did with it this year, but I think it's just been general energy projects, so I'm not sure if that wording is change. But it's been for various energy projects or related projects, I guess.
Thank you for the suggestion. Could I just have a friendly amendment to the schedule?
Yep. Any other questions? Go ahead, Councillor Chachka.
Through the chair to our CFO, regarding the, where is it, our CAO contingency. So it's listed at 250,000. I'm just wondering if that's a normal amount to have for that, for items that might come up. And that I was just questioning on how it's replenished. So is that just at year end or throughout the year if required? I just didn't quite understand that part of it.
Yeah, I'm still on. Through the mayor to Councillor Chachka. I apologize. Lots of new names. Yes, the CAO reserve will be, as it's used, we'll try our best to replenish it. Again, we do not want it to get into a deficit position. So as it's used for emergent items, we'll try on a quarterly basis to bring it to council to replenish the reserve on a quarterly basis. So you'll see, my hope is we can do this. So we're a bit short-staffed, and so our hope is that on a quarterly basis, we can say, this is what was purchased under the CAO reserve, and ask for council approval to reallocate it from the proper department's reserves. So if it's, say, a fire department and they need to purchase something, they go to the CAO, it needs to be done quickly. She approves it, and then it comes to finance. When we come forward with our quarterly statements, we will also come forward with a recommendation to replenish that reserve.
All right, any further questions, comments, concerns? All right, I will then take a motion, please, and I believe you want to make the motion that council approve reserve policy FB4 as amended,
Yes, please.
taking into account the suggestions that were made here during the discussion. Ms. Veerboom, do you want to put that up on the screen, please?
Do I need to do something here?
All right, so the motion is that council approve reserve policy FB4 as amended. Go ahead, Councillor Schnard.
I move that council approve reserve policy FB4 as amended.
That motion is carried unanimously. Can I get a motion, please, that council rescind reserve policy FB3? Councillor Pizzicini.
I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Pisichny. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? That motion is carried unanimously. Can I get a motion, please, that council approve the allocation of $4,564,453,000 from the accumulated surplus to reserves? Councillor Chachka.
I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Chachka. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Just a question to our acting chief financial officer, Ms. McDonald. You mentioned this is all from the 2023 surplus, or does that include some from 2022 as well?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Mayor. This is specifically 2023. My understanding is 2022 had $1.2 million surplus. And I'm not confident, I know for sure, but I believe that it also was not allocated. So if council can be patient as I learn a little bit more about the organization and what the proper number will be by the end of the year, we will dig into those numbers and have a better answer for you of what is the true amount to move over.
Thank you very much for that, Ms. McDonald. All right, thank you. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. And can I get a motion, please, that council approve the reallocation of reserves to support reserve policy FB4? Go ahead, Councillor Moore.
I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? That motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, Ms. McDonald, for all your hard work and heavy lifting, and Mr. Goebel as well. I know you've been very busy, and council does appreciate the tremendous efforts that you're doing for our organization. Next up, we have the appointment of the Director of Emergency Management, and we'll hand things over to Ms. Christine Beveridge, our CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased to present this item this evening. I'm not going to go through this RFD. It's fairly self-explanatory. It is required that council does appoint the Director of Emergency Management. We have had the pleasure of having Mr. Kitlitz as our DEM over the past several months. Clayton has carried us through a time where transition was required, and we thank him very much for his efforts. So this is no slight on his behalf as far as his duties for the town of Edson in acting in this capacity. What I am pleased to present is that we have a situation where we are now positioned to be have further support from our fire services and emergency services with the recommendation that our fire chief is appointed as DEM. And as you know, as council, as we were building out the fire department and adding full-time staff, you know, the intention was to actually lessen the load across the board, and also just to be able to position ourselves to have further support when it comes to emergency management, as well as fire services as a whole. I'm quite confident, extremely confident with Mr. Bradley Milton as our fire chief and his role as Director of Emergency Management for the town of Edson. I think that as we've gotten to know Brad through emergencies that we have actually faced, as well as just general day-to-day, and his ability to manage through situations and also create relationships. And why I bring that up is that's very important in this role as well. So as I mentioned, I have full confidence in this recommendation. One of the things that comes along with the appointment is to actually help prepare the rest of the organization, that continual preparedness that we have been doing, definitely more focused, I think, in this last year or so. But I think that in addition to not only Chief Milton, but also the deputy chief, as well as our enforcement services manager, they definitely add to the level of expertise. And I think that we're going to be able to achieve great things when it comes to our after action report and everything as far as preparing our continual preparedness for our community. So That concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I do have a secondary motion that I would also like to request council to consider. At this, you know, in your RFD, it just speaks to the appointment of the fire chief as DEM, but also we do have the opportunity to also appoint the deputy directors of emergency management as well. One of the things is it's not listed within our bylaw very clearly that it is me that can appoint or the DEM that can appoint. So for clarity, it's best to just have council appoint. And also, we didn't see any reason for delaying this to come back to council for another item. And, you know, even though the tenure has been short for both of those individuals, the same goes, our confidence in the individuals to help move this organization and also support the community in this effort I think they will be well served. So the second motion we'll have up on the screen after we're done. Thank you.
All right. Before we take a motion, do we have any questions for Ms. Beveridge on the appointment of the Director of Emergency Management? Go ahead, Councillor Chenard.
I'll make the motion that council appoint the fire chief as Director of Emergency Management for the town of Edson.
Thank you, Councillor Chenard. For your work over the last little while, and we have some secondary motions. And Ms. Veerboom will get on the screen. And the motion reads: the council appoint the Deputy Fire Chief and Enforcement Services Manager as Deputy Directors of Emergency Management. Councillor Bevan, would you like to make that motion?
I'll make the motion that council appoint the Deputy Fire Chief and the Enforcement Service Manager as Deputy Directors of Emergency Management.
All right. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Congratulations, Mr. Christensen, and to our Deputy Chief, who's not here this evening. With that, we will move on to Council Committee reports. And we are going on to October the 2nd. Oh, sorry, go ahead. CO Beveridge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have an addition to the agenda that was approved earlier this
Oh,
evening.
right. Thank you
No worries.
for...
Thank you very much.
We have G5. I prefer G6, but G5's fine. All right, come on, Mr. Barisco. It was nothing personal, I apologize. Disposal of fleet and equipment.
That's fine, Mr. Mayor. After the hour and a half I took your time last. This summer, our fleet supervisor is trying to get his head wrapped around our assets, asset management, all of our fleet, just condition assessments. Through a lot of his, I guess, assessment of all the equipment, we found out that we have quite a bit of equipment that for this year is left over from stuff that's maybe not operational very well anymore. It's been replaced. It's getting older and aging and just was kind of sitting there. So obviously that's what we're here for today, to ask in the RFD. Now, as part of that policy FX3 that was passed by council in June 6th, of 2023, it had a couple items that were going to meet council's approval before we can dispose of any equipment. So attachment number 1 shows that we have 2011 Elgin Eagle sweeper that's probably going to exceed a value of $10,000. And same thing with the 2019 Surfer Sweeper 3000 from Parks, which is a outdated piece of equipment, which will probably also meet that. Also in attachment number 3 is a bunch of equipment and small pieces and attachments that don't need council's approval, but will need the CAO approval prior to disposal. Also, because in our policy, it's not really clear, we do have some excess firewood left over this year from a bunch of the storms and a bunch of the flooding that the crews have taken down. Excess meaning that all of our service groups are full, all of our parks or campgrounds are full. And literally it's just, there's too much for us to handle. As we don't want to go out for something like firewood, it is a property of the town, part of the policy. It would be under, basically, we'd have to get bids or quotations, go to a public auction, or if nothing goes through, we'd have to wait 30 days and then we could decide to take a lowest bidder offer kind of thing. So with that firewood, what we're recommending for that is to open it up to the public in a safe space where we could let the public or members of the public take some free firewood and benefit the public without, I guess, causing us any more work or where to store it or what to do with it kind of thing. Is there any questions on anything so far with the disposal and the attachments or on any questions?
All right, council, do you have any questions for Mr. Barisco? Go ahead, Councillor Chenard.
Just clarification, this stuff going out for auctions, it'll be going through Patterson auction time rather than how we did it last time in the town? So this will be all listed through Patterson's auctions then, on a timed auction, is that correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Chenard, we're doing both ways. So obviously, the best thing we want to do is get the best value for the dollar for the town of Edson. So we're recommending that some of the stuff goes to Ritchie Brothers. Obviously, some of our bigger pieces of equipment, like a sweeper, is not going to go very well off to here. We'll get a better deal if we bring it to something like Edmonton, where we have competitive bidders and people that want that types of equipment. A lot of our smaller stuff is going through Patterson auctions. It will be starting on November 4th, and they do that online auction, which I believe is about 5 or 6 days, something like that. So we're trying to do a little bit of both. That way we're supporting local, but we're also getting the best bang for our buck for the municipality, hopefully for some of our bigger items.
Thank you.
Any other questions, council?
And if I could, Mr. Mayor, I'd like if we could add one addition to motion number 2. If we could add that also the proceeds of the sales of attachment number 3 also go into our surplus. Currently, that motion only specifies that the Elgin Eagle and the Street Surfer go into the like the sale; those go into the surplus. If we could add all the smaller items that go from the auction, if they could also be added into our surplus for the fleet.
It's been changed on our,
Oh, has it?
Yeah,
Already?
yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I got the old copy.
I believe so, right, Mr. Kitlitz?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I guess also considering the reserve policy was just passed, this existing reserve, this reserve no longer exists. I think it would be the fleet reserve now is what it would be. So I think I've give Ms. Veerman the heads up. So I think your motions will show that it's the fleet reserve now pending council's decision just a few minutes ago.
All right. Things happen quickly at the town of Edson. There we go. I do want to say that I do appreciate giving that firewood away locally. I'm sure there's people locally that could use that, hopefully. With that, I will take a motion that council approve the disposal of fleet and equipment as listed in attachment 1. Go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
I so move.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? That motion is carried unanimously. And then we have motion number 2, that council approve all proceeds from the sale of the disposed fleet and equipment in attachment 1 and attachment 3 to be allocated to the fleet reserve. Go ahead, Councillor Chachka.
I so move.
Thank you. That is the correct reserve. Thank you. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? That motion is carried. And can I get a motion that council direct administration to offer the excess wood from the 2024 summer storms to the public at no cost? Councillor Bevan.
I'll make it so.
Thank you, Councillor Bevan. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? That motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Much shorter tonight, Mr. Barisco. All right, council committee reports. Going back to October the 2nd, and we will start today with Councillor Chenard.
Oh, I'm live. October 7th, Trans-Canada Highway, we invited mayors of the area, and it was Zoomed with MLA Martin Long, just to bring him up to date and advocating for us. October 9th and 10th, I attended ASHA, was the Northern Seniors meeting for Northern Alberta with Evergreens in Edmonton. And that's it for my report.
Thank you, Councillor Chenard. Councillor Chachka.
Thanks. On my report, I've got October 7th. I attended a Community Futures West Yellowhead special meeting. So hopefully there's good news eventually coming forward from that. On October 9th, I attended the Community Futures West Yellowhead Town of Edson Business Walks, along with our GM, Chris Chapates, and a few others. And these walks were a little bit different than the last 4 or 5 I've attended, and some issues around the homelessness population kind of were brought up a little bit more frequently than have been in the past. And Community Futures will provide a report for the spring and fall business walks, likely combined together shortly. So, and then following that, today as a part of my new board, the Community Care Foundation, the Physician Attraction, Retention, and Recruitment Subcommittee, I toured a potential doctor who is considering practicing within the town of Edson. He has not signed on yet, but we definitely put our best foot forward and provided him with the information he required. So we hope that in time he will choose Edson, and that's my report.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chachka. Councillor Moore. Oh, hang on. I hit the wrong button. There we go.
Thank you. October 8th, committee meeting. October 10th, the honor of presenting certificates from the MLA and MP and assisting the mayor at the Edson Chamber of Commerce Business Awards. It was great to see the active businesses and the newcomers as well being rewarded. And that was just super. And that's my report.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Councillor Bevan.
October the 7th, I also attended the Community Futures Zoom meeting, and like Councillor Chaska said, it'll be coming. More information will be coming along later on, and that is my report.
Thank you. Councillor Pasichny.
October 7th, we had our youth council meeting. So we have a couple of new faces on there and a couple of experienced faces. So it's exciting to see and some good energy there. October the 8th, Committee of the Whole meeting. October 9th, Chamber of the Commerce meeting. That is my report.
Thank you. And Councillor Taylor.
On October 3rd, I attended an FCSS meeting where we began talking about organizing a strategic planning session for the next few months. October 7th, I attended a Yellowhead Regional Library Board meeting where we looked at the budget for 2025 and just subject to approval in December, Edson's allotment will be $39,776.50 will be our allotment to YRL. Also on October 7th, I attended a youth council meeting where, as Councillor Pasichny had said, we had 3 new members. And lots of ideas floated around for a project this year, which was they'll solidify at their November meeting. I did think the chair of the meeting needed a little bit of work. This one over here. Other than that, it was fine. Yeah, that's right. And then on October 8th, I attended the Committee of the Whole meeting. And shameless plug that on Friday, the library grand opening is at noon, and we hope to see everyone there. That is my report.
All right, thank you. On October the 4th, I attended a WYRWMA meeting, West Yellowhead Regional Waste Management Authority meeting via Zoom. Our new manager of the authority, Kevin Miles, this was his first meeting. It was a 425-page agenda, so I'll go through everything line by line. No, I will not. One of the things I think council will be interested in is that following Edson putting in our mattress diversion program, the Regional Waste Authority did the same after much discussion. And so far, 2,213 mattresses have been diverted from the landfill. That's huge. It's going to save a lot of landfill space. We are seeing more and more being diverted from the landfill. Also, as you are aware, the regional landfill has been approved to accept mixed waste from Jasper. However, the loads that we were expecting have not been arriving. So our contractor out there has basically lessened the amount of equipment and people out there until Jasper's ready to bring us that waste. And then we started discussing budgets and as well as look at further planning for upgrades needed at the landfill. And cell 8 is pretty much complete as well. October 8th, we had the committee of the whole meeting, and then October 10th joined Councillor Moore at the Chamber Business Awards. Fairly good turnouts. Great to see so many new businesses and longstanding businesses recognized, and special recognition going out to Derek and Louise with ×2. They were recognized as they will no longer be in business at the end of this year. Their business is for sale, but they've been a longstanding member of our community, and their business has been a focal point in downtown Edson. So certainly sad to see them go, but it's great to see them recognized at the event along with all the other businesses. We have no information items, no notices of motion. Can I get a motion to go into closed session, please? Go ahead, Councillor Chachka.
I so move.
Thank you. All those in favor? That motion is carried. All right, thank you. And do we have Ms. Fearboom online?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The motion should be coming up shortly here.
All right, the motion reads that council direct administration to proceed as directed in closed session. Would a member of council please make that motion? Councillor Chachka.
I so move.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? That motion is carried. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Oh, one in opposition, sorry. I didn't say unanimously, did I?